Today we're going to paint a commission I'm working on of London and Dallas, a mix. Again, you're creating lines. When you have something with a perspective like this, it's all about your lines. If your lines are off, the painting will be off. It won't look right. I'm going to go ahead and make this one pretty stout, and then I know that I'm going to come back in with a darker color and just kind of rub that color in a little bit just to fill in that white canvas. So I'll actually take a rag and a little bit of paint thinner, a turpenoid, or we use a speedball product from Mona Lisa. That's good, no odor whatsoever. And of course, if you go to Home Depot and get some of their odorless paint thinner, you'll learn as soon as you open that up that that's false advertising, without a doubt. What I'm trying to do is I'm washing out this background just a little bit, just to give us, so we don't have the stark white canvas, showing through. And I'll even take this green that I just put in there. And this building actually has, it's not quite that green, but luckily with art, you can do whatever you want. Now when you're scraping paint, it's really important to know where you're laying your paint on thick. You want it to, because if you're gonna drag it and move oil across oil, you really have one shot at making that kind of look good. You might have two if you're lucky, because whenever you mix oil, the more you mix it, the muddier it gets, especially when you're mixing colors or have colors on the canvas that don't naturally mix together. And I use a medium in with my paint to speed the drying process up. Some people don't. If you don't put any medium in your oil paint, depending on what brand it is, you will, sometimes it'll take a long time. Your primaries take longer to dry than your subs, your middle colors, your secondary colors, as the educated would call it. So in that, I always kind of think about putting something in there, because if you don't, it'll stay wet for, like your blues, yellows, and reds will take 6 weeks, up to 6 weeks to dry all the way through. So think about that whenever you're working with oil. Acrylic dries immediately, so you really don't have to put anything in acrylic. Some people actually will put some stuff in acrylic to extend the drying period, so it acts more like oil. Luckily, it'll speed it up pretty good. I mean, I painted this painting right here last night, and it should be dry to the touch by tomorrow, but it'll still be curing for at least a year after that. Just have an extra canvas next to me because I scrape off a lot of paint, and I'll start working on the background of my next masterpiece, if someone were to call it that. But I look at every background or at every painting that didn't work as just a background to your next masterpiece. I sand my edges down on my tools so it doesn't create lines. When you're painting and you take something, there's a few ways to scrape your paint. One of the first things that I did when I first started off I guess it's about 8 years ago, I started painting with cardboard. And so what I would do to scrape and move my paint, I would take something like this, and I would basically take just like this right here, and I will scrape down. But if you notice, with me scraping this and pulling this paint, you can see that there's lines present. So cardboard is going to give you natural lines in there, which is cool. I mean, using that as a background, you're going to see on these other ones, I use cardboard several times. So a lot of times I'll start with this just to kind of let that color sit inside that other color, and then I'll bring this down. And I think the faster the better. It gives you a lot of good movement. But instead of taking all this paint right here that's on there, and a lot of people scrape it and throw it away, I'll actually take this and I'll move it to another canvas. So I'll start, remember our blank canvas over here when I start working, and I'll just start moving colors and putting it on here. And by doing this, one, it helps you stay effective with your time and your materials, which is, part of business. Keeping your expenses low and not having a lot of waste is key in any business. But what I'm basically doing is I'm doing a free form piece here that doesn't have I don't know what it's going to be yet, you know, but a lot of times it's just going to be a background. And usually in my studio I have one of these pieces like this, and you know, this right here was one of those that I worked on probably for 3 months, that I just scraped all the paint that came off of the commissions I was working on, or the pieces that I was painting on, and I just put it on another canvas. So that builds in a lot of background and texture and depth and layering that people really love. People are really attracted to it, and just something about it that shows that it's actually had a lot of effort on that piece. Move that across there. So that gives us a little bit of motion going that way. And again, I'll take this and come up with it. So I'm going to create some more lines in the bottom now. And one thing that, if I've got something that's kind of hard to get to like this, I'll actually take the canvas and I'll flip it and put it upside down so it's easier for me to scrape. And I'll scrape and get my movement going this way. So we'll take our same cardboard, which, you know, also look at the thickness of your cardboard. This one's a double ply, where this one is a single ply. And the single ply seems like it gets a little bit better of a scrape. You get better lines with it from what I've seen. But the great thing about cardboard is it's free. You get it pretty much anytime you ship something. Someone's going to give you some cardboard. Instead of throwing it away, I repurpose it. And sometimes I'll even get like tape and I'll just leave it and see if it gives it a cool effect, and just kind of trust that instinct and whenever it comes out. So we created an up movement there. Now again, I still have all this color here. Now this has a lot of reds and multiple colors in here. I don't want to put that in the sky, so I'll take this and I'll move it over to this canvas and start this on a background. Kind of let it do its own little thing. And a lot of times it'll have a pretty cool effect that'll just naturally happen from gravity. You know, a lot of times gravity can be your best friend. Of course, it can also be your worst friend if you have thick, really, really thick paint on there. If you have it on the wall like I do, it could fall off and roll down the canvas. You know, this gray here that we're mixing, there was a little bit of yellow in it, but I'm not really worried about it because this yellow is already in here. And when you have something this strong of a color, you know, on a dark tone like this, you really don't have to worry about having a little bit of a light color in there, but we're going to lighten it up with some white anyway. That clear medium that I put in is that liquid impasto, and that's that gel that speeds up the drying. It's more expensive than the oil itself, but it's only about, you know, a few bucks more expensive. And you know, with that, it helps speed that drying up, you know, so quick. I mean, it speeds it up from, you know, a gray like this would take about 3 weeks to dry to the touch. But in a thick area like this, if we were to leave this like this and probably come back 10 years, 20 years later, you could actually take your knife, slice it open, and still get wet oil in this little sample here. I heard some people say 50, 100 years. They haven't been working on it that long, so I don't know how you could know that, you know, so, but I know I've been working with it in 10 years, and I've had some old paintings that were thick like that I cut open and it was still wet. When you're working with oil, it's key to keep your palette knives clean, your brushes clean when you're mixing color. If you don't, it'll get muddy a lot quicker and a lot easier. So that's why I always have tissues with me, usually in one hand as I'm wiping away and go into color. Never be afraid to use your artistic license when you're painting. I think too many people try to get it exactly like the photograph whenever they're painting something, and I think it's key to kind of leave it loose, especially when you're painting with palette knife, and then it should come across pretty nicely. So I actually like the way that heart looks. Like, I kind of don't want to mess with it. I feel like I've lost it on this bottom one down here. It doesn't quite have the flow that I want it to. I'm gonna try it again. And then this time, I'm just gonna trust it. So I think the key to doing these and making them look good is going quickly with them and just trust the natural movement. There's a certain point in the painting where you feel like, well, if you do anything else, you might mess it up. And if you get to that point, walk away, because sometimes it's hard to come back from it. I want to thank you all today for viewing. It's been my pleasure to be able to paint in front of you. If you like my work and even consider wanting to purchase some of my work, please click on the link below and follow us. I'll do my best to bring great content, video content, audio content, just for you.